Hello, welcome to our weird world. I'm your host, John Hinson. I don't know why he says it like that. But yeah, this week, talking about a trio of German serial killers. Because, look, Germany, no shortage of just terrible people. I think you don't even have to know a lot about history to know that. But these people obviously kind of fell through the cracks of history because, the whole Holocaust thing. And that's fine. Probably rightfully so. But it's my job to bring them back and to talk about them and to let you know about them. So this week, looking at the stories of Fritz Haarmann, Adolf Seefeldt, and Rudolf Pleil. And let's get into it. First story is of Fritz Haarmann, who was the sixth and final child, born to Johanna and Ollie Haarmann, probably Johanna and Ollie Haarmann, in Hanover on August 25th, 1879. And as a child, Fritz was pretty quiet. He never really socialized with anyone other than his other siblings. And instead of, doing normal German boy things like playing soccer or hating Jewish people, Fritz really preferred playing with his sister's dolls and dressing in their clothes. He even got into sewing. He became a really good cook. He was basically a girl, at least in terms of like gender roles and gender, related interests, which, look, whatever. I think Fritz here is being a pioneer. All right. He is blurring the lines with, stereotypical gender roles. And I think that's great. All right. I think there's no shame in men doing stereotypically feminine things. All right. Whatever you want to do, bro. You want to crochet a toboggan, you be the best toboggan crocheter there ever would have been, right? That's fine. I think it's great, right? Fritz, he dropped out of formal school at age 15 because he wasn't particularly good at school. And so instead he enrolled in a nearby military academy. But 5 months in, Fritz just randomly began losing consciousness, almost as if he had epilepsy. But for whatever reason, like he wasn't diagnosed with epilepsy, but like dude would just drop out of consciousness, not like narcolepsy where you would fall asleep, like just total unconsciousness. So he was discharged from the military and moved back to Hanover, where he worked at a cigar factory that his father owned. The next year, for some reason, I don't know what happened, but Fritz began luring young boys into cellars and sexually assaulting them. He was arrested for these assaults and was committed to a mental institution where he was declared incurably deranged. All right. Now, authorities even sentenced him to stay institutionalized indefinitely, and he did so for approximately 7 months before he broke out and fled to Zurich, Switzerland. Now, typically, as these stories go, you have all of these psychologists, psychiatrists, whatever. Like, this dude is permanently just completely incurable. He doesn't need to be let out in public again. He needs to be locked up forever. And then for some reason, he just gets let go. But in this case, he just breaks out of this mental institution, which I don't know which one's worse. Fritz returned to Hanover a year later. And then here's the thing. Everyone seemed fine with it. Like, everyone knew he was back, I guess. And even more, he actually found a woman to not only marry him, but to also have a child with him. And then in 1900, Fritz received a notice that he was supposed to begin his required military service, which indicated that the entire country of Germany had forgotten that he was supposed to be locked up in a mental institution forever, which I don't know how this happens. He was sent to France, where he quickly gained a reputation for being an excellent marksman. But after collapsing again during a training exercise, Fritz was deemed unfit for service and dismissed on July 28, 1902. 2 years later, as if things weren't bad enough, everything at this point completely fell apart. He was officially declared unfit to work in general. His pregnant fiance called off their marriage, and then he lost the fish market that the two had started, that had opened up together. And so for the next decade, Fritz spent time in and out of prison for various theft and embezzlement charges. And then after World War I, when Germany was overwhelmed with poverty, Fritz developed this relationship with a local police officer, or with the local police department, as an informant, which he used to get access to young boys that he then used to, like, not only keep the heat off of himself, because like the police were never going to expect the informant that they were using to actually be someone who's committing the crimes, but as an informant, and as he was getting access to these young boys for whatever reason, I don't know, he was then able to continue molesting young boys. It's kind of genius, actually. By then, like at this point, like Fritz was a known homosexual, which was illegal at the time, but like that's probably why he became an informant, as kind of like this plea agreement where it's like, okay, we won't put you in jail for being gay if you'll just help us out. And Fritz was like, yes, that seems like a very good idea. You're going to tell me that I can continue to be around young boys that my penis likes? My Vito Wiener gets so happy around young boys? And you're not going to put me in jail for that? You're going to just let me do it? Yes, absolutely. I love to do that. I've worked for you all the time. Yes. Like, this is such a terrible idea. But yeah, like, as long as Fritz was helping police capture other child molesters, basically, the Hanover police just kind of looked the other way at his own homosexuality. And so because Fritz was practically immune to arrest at this point, like he took it a step further, and he proceeded to murder at least 24 people over the next 6 years. Every single one of his victims was a male between the ages of 10 and 22. And each time Fritz would lure the boy or the young adult back to his home on the premise of either like giving them some work or just straight up telling them that he was a police informant, that he was bringing them back to have them arrested, or he was going to have them arrested for a crime that they had committed if they did not cooperate with him. And so he would take them back to his house, and after giving them something to eat and drink, Fritz would then just start strangling them and then biting down on their Adam's apples, which, that's gross. On some occasions, Fritz would actually bite so hard that he would bite through the Adam's apple and into his victims' windpipes. And then once they were dead, Fritz dismembered the bodies and then dumped them into the Lane River. On May 17th, 1924, two children who were playing along the banks of the Lane River discovered a human skull, which probably the coolest day ever for them. Probably not great for anybody else. Police immediately discredited any foul play since the area had recently been through an outbreak of typhoid fever. But when another skull and a bag of bones were found 2 weeks later, police started paying closer attention to what was going on. On June 8th, after several other remains had been discovered, hundreds of Hanover residents started searching the Lane River for more bones, which were then quickly found and immediately turned over to police. Past rumors about odd disappearances of teen boys in the city over the last few years suddenly started to make sense, which, like, what's going on in this? And I get it's like just after World War I. Germany as a country is just completely decimated. And so there's probably all kinds of crazy stuff being said. And like one of us, oh, these young boys have gone missing in the city and like no one cares. Or it's like, we got bigger problems. People actually immediately began suspecting Fritz for this because not only was he just known as the town creep, he was also the town criminal and the town homosexual. Police kind of didn't want to think of him as a suspect at first, again, because he was acting as this informant, but 10 days later, they did place him under surveillance, and on June 22nd, police observed Fritz arguing with a 15-year-old boy. Fritz, still working, though, as an informant, came over to hand the boy over to police and told them to arrest this kid for traveling with forged documents. And so they did. And then while they're interrogating this kid, the boy revealed that he had actually been living with Fritz for 4 days and that Fritz had been repeatedly raping him, which, if you're Fritz, what are you doing? How do you just let this kid, like, knowing what this kid knows and knowing that he's probably going to tell everyone, unless the kid was like, no, Fritz, I won't tell anyone. Like, of course he's going to tell everyone. And so, yeah, like, Fritz was arrested the next day based on this kid's confession. Police then searched Fritz's house and found it stained with all kinds of blood. They also found the personal belongings of several of the missing boys from over the last few years. And with piles of evidence in front of him, Fritz was like, he couldn't deny it. He confessed to all of these murders, but tried to defend himself because he claimed that he had never intended to actually murder anyone, but he was just so passionately gay in that moment that when he was doing his little biting thing, he just bit down a little too hard and choked everyone to death, right? Because that happens. I guess, I don't know, gay listeners of the podcast, write in, tell me, I don't know how gay sex works. Do you bite down? Do you do like, are you like a tiger? You just like a little gay tiger in the woods, just biting people's necks. Sometimes you bite a little too hard. Is that how it goes? I don't know. If it is, cool. By all means, man, do your thing. Get a little kinky. I don't care. Whatever makes you happy. As long as the other person's okay with it, I think I should make that clear. Do whatever makes you happy. As long as if another person is involved, they are okay with it, right? Because if you're doing something to someone else and they are not okay with it, that becomes a problem. But, look, I know it might take some of the excitement and the spontaneity out of it if you have to stop and be like, hey, can we do this? Can I get a verbal? All right. It's like a flight attendant. I need a verbal confirmation that you are okay with me biting your neck like I'm a tiger, like I'm a sassy tiger, right? So as long as and so look, but you can rekindle that passion pretty quick, maybe, I'm guessing. Anyway, Fritz's trial began on December 4th, and he was formally charged with 27 murders, to which he pled guilty to 14. And after 2 weeks and 190 witnesses testifying against him, Fritz was found guilty on 24 of the 27 murder charges and was sentenced to death by hanging. He was then guillotined on the grounds of Hanover Prison on April 15th, 1925. Our next story here is of Adolf Seefeldt, who was the 7th and final child born to a Potsdam, Germany family in 1870. So, pattern starting to develop. If you have more than 5 kids, chances are the 6th or the 7th one going to end up a little creepy. All right. And that's probably, look, that checks, right? That tracks, right? Think about, I don't know, a bottle of mayonnaise. All right. The first squeeze of the mayonnaise is probably pretty good mayonnaise. You get down to the bottom at the end of that bottle, it's probably not good. That's, it's real tangy mayonnaise at that point. All right. Maybe not even the same consistency. You got that water in there from the condensation of the bottle because you keep leaving it out for an hour or two after dinner. Now it's just like runny white water, but not even like, it's not even the same consistency as like skim milk. It's just like this weird other plasma liquid. Anyway, all I'm saying is that kid, not as good as like the top of the bottle kid. All right. You get it. Adolf grew up to become a watchmaker and made a living repairing grandfather clocks and pocket watches because, late 1800s, early 1900s, that was the thing. When the Third Reich came into power, Adolf then just decided to start murdering young boys because, look, that wasn't even the worst thing that was happening in Germany at the time. Like, that had to have been like a big relief for some German people, especially like Adolf Seefeldt. Because, hey, first of all, he's not even the worst Adolf in Germany in that moment. All right? So there you go. You can cast a little bit wider net there. Then also, Germany's in the midst of sending all of these different ethnicities, mostly Jews, but different ethnicities to these concentration camps. And everyone's focusing on that. So you're kind of like, well, I can probably kill some people. No one's going to notice. And they probably just assume they got sent off to a camp, never to be seen again. And so Adolf decides to start murdering young boys. And over the next few years, at least 12 boys turned up dead. And they were all found in the exact same way. These boys were found wearing sailor suits, and there was no evidence of physical violence, like almost as if they had died in their sleep. And because the rest of Germany was so busy killing all of the Jews, no one thought much of what this Adolf was doing. And so even like much of this actual story and the details of Adolf Seefeld's murders are actually just lost to history because like no one cared. No one cared that a dozen boys in sailor suits turned up dead because of this one guy. That's how much we focused on World War II, and probably rightfully so. Look, every murder has some element of sadness. Even the worst people who get murdered, there's still some sadness there. A young boy that gets murdered, very sad, very tragic. Arguably not as tragic as the death of 6 million Jewish people. Look, the death of one white child, all right, regardless of your political, religious, social views, not more important than the death of 6 million Jewish people. Like, even if you hate Jewish people, 6 million to 1, even 6 million to 12, still not an equal ratio, all right? The Jews are still going to win this one, all right? At least that's my opinion. If you disagree, I don't know what to tell you because you're wrong in that one. However, despite all of this, modern murder experts believe that basically Adolf lured these boys into his possession and then hypnotized them into such a deep sleep that then allowed him to put his wiener into their mouths. I don't know how you come up with this. Like, sitting around as a murder expert, just like, I think these boys, like, they clearly had not been physically assaulted. So what happened? I know what happened. All right, check me out here. All right, he hypnotizes them, puts them into such a deep sleep, and then, because he's a sexual deviant, he just takes out his wiener and just stuffs it in their mouths, like pries their little 10, 12-year-old jaws open. Why am I getting so graphic at that? You get it. Instead of waking them up, however, Adolf would just let them sleep in the woods where they would eventually die of either starvation or hypothermia. Although authorities only linked 12 deaths to Adolf Seefeldt, it's possible that more deaths that were originally attributed to natural causes could have actually been part of Adolf's killing spree, and some people speculate that he may have killed as many as 100 boys. At some point, we don't know when because no one kept record of this, Adolf Seefeldt was arrested and convicted of 12 murders, and despite an appeal, he was sentenced to death. And on May 23rd, 1936, it was noted that he eagerly walked to the guillotine for his execution. So, like, he knew what he was doing. Our final story here is of Rudolf Pleil, who was born on July 7th, 1924, in a small German village near the border with Czechoslovakia. By age 9, Pleil was working to support his family by smuggling various items across the border, for which he was repeatedly arrested, because you can't do that for whatever reason. Because that area was also under Nazi rule at the time, Pleil's family lived in severe poverty, and his sister was actually forcibly sterilized by the Nazis because of her epilepsy. At age 13, Pleil also had his first sexual encounter with a prostitute. So, I mean, life isn't that bad, right? Like, sure, the Nazis are ruling everything, all right? They just forcibly sterilized your sister because she's got the epilepsy. But you just ran into a hooker down on the street, and she kind of showed you what was what. So, yeah, it's a wash. Maybe. For the next few years, Pleil worked various jobs while running illegal operations on the side. He was jailed for theft. He was declared unfit for service in the Nazi army, which he was probably okay with. And he was ordered to be sterilized because he also had epilepsy. However, 4 days before his procedure, the medical office where he was about to go get snipped got bombed. So obviously that appointment got canceled. Instead, Pleil was sent to work as a cook at a labor camp where, to apparently pass an incredibly large amount of free time, Pleil killed and ate stray cats, which sad and weird. After the Red Army invaded and took over his labor camp in 1945, Pleil was then hired as an auxiliary policeman, where he decided that rather than just killing and eating cats, he wanted to start killing people. So he first shot a Soviet soldier, didn't kill him though, just injured him. And so, he kind of played it off like, oh no, I'm so clumsy. It's my epilepsy. I just got all and I hit the trigger and I'm so sorry. I mustn't not be able to use guns. I'm a bad policeman. The next year, in 1946, Pleil began working as a frontier worker in the village of Hars and went back to helping people illegally cross the border from Germany into Czechoslovakia. However, he and two of his accomplices, Karl Hoffman and Konrad Schubler, also killed at least 12 women along the way with various weapons, I guess just because they thought it was fun. Another 13 police officers also disappeared. And then on April 18th, 1947, the dismembered body of Hamburg businessman Hermann Bennen was found by police after reports that Bennen had been robbed and had gone missing. Bennen and Pleil had actually gotten into an altercation at the border, and Pleil had just decided to hack Bennen to death with a hatchet. Since Pleil was completely drunk at the time, as were most Germans, the court reduced the charge to manslaughter and gave him like a reduced jail sentence. While in prison, Pleil just decided to confess to all of the other murders that he had committed, which helped police a lot since they had no idea that there were murders that needed to be confessed to to begin with, which is great. That's great. And again, I get it. It's after World War II. All right. Germany, again, completely decimated. They've got bigger issues to deal with. They know, like, so many people have died, right? So many people have died. They can't keep track of who was murdered versus who was exterminated by the Nazis versus who died in a bombing, right? It's just so many things going on. So Pleil published a memoir with the most original title. I love this title. Never been used before. 100% for sure. The title of his memoir was Mein Kampf. And which it's so stupid. Surely he knew, right? He knew that Hitler had written a book with the same name, right? I don't know. But Pleil, in his version of Mein Kampf, went into detail about all of the murders that he had committed. He claimed a total of 25 victims, which at the time he thought was more than Fritz Haarmann's total from earlier today. Haarmann found guilty of 24 murders, as you might remember. So he thought, I got 25. I'm one better than Fritz Haarmann. I'm the man. So he thought that he was the greatest murderer of all time, or at least the greatest German murderer of all time. And then 3 weeks after his trial started, Pleil and his two accomplices were sentenced to life in prison, not even given death sentences. So it shows you how much belief they had in his story. So Pleil then just hanged himself in his cell on February 16th, 1958. I would love to travel to Europe one day. I have no desire to see Germany ever. Like, between all of the World War II stuff and then just all of these insane individuals. And look, here's the thing. We're going to have more stories coming out of Germany later on down the road, for sure. I've got them lined up. Just nothing Nothing about that country appeals to me whatsoever. All right. I'll go to the UK, Ireland all day. France, meh, take it or leave it. Spain, meh, maybe. Italy, for sure. Want to see Italy, even though people say it's overrated or, I don't know. Some people have said it's overrated. I'd still want to go see it. Anyway, the point is, I don't care to ever go to Germany in my lifetime. Just seems like a terrible place full of terrible people. So, I don't know. Whatever. I don't know why I even said all that. Let's see what we learned today.
What did we learn?
Number one, Fritz Haarmann used his job as a police informant to catch other child molesters to just molest more children. And he killed at least 24 boys and was considered to be Germany's greatest serial killer, at least, for a little bit. Number two, Adolf Seefeldt. Not the worst Adolf in Germany at the time he was alive, which had to have been incredibly convenient for him. And number three, Rudolf Pleil confessed to 25 murders, thinking that he was better than Fritz Haarmann. And Germany, I don't know if they agreed with him or not, so he just hanged himself. Next week on Our Weird World, we are looking at some more really stupid wars that happened in history. Got 4 more stories for you. We're going to look at the Watermelon War, the Brooks-Baxter War, the Oyster War, and the Red River Bridge War. Just all kinds of silliness, all kinds of stupid stuff that we have fought over as a species over the course of history. So that's what we'll talk about next week. Thank you all for listening. Keep telling all your friends about the show so we can keep it growing and keep it weird. Well, way down yonder on the Chattahoochee, it gets hotter than a hoochie coochie. We laid rubber on the Georgie asphalt. We got a little crazy, but we never got caught. Well, we fogged up the windows in my old Chevy. I was willing, but she wasn't ready. So I settled for a burger and a grape snow cone, dropped her off early, but I didn't go home. Down by the river on a Friday night, a pyramid of cans in the pale moonlight, talking about cars and dreaming about women. Never had a plan, just a living for the minute. Yeah, way down yonder on the Chattahoochee, never knew how much that muddy water meant to me. But I learned how to swim, and I learned who I was, a lot about living, and a little about love.